Hey everybody, welcome to the Pound for Pound Leader Podcast with Mike Kai. My name is DJ Garces, podcast director, and I have the privilege of introducing our special episode today, which is part one of two great episodes. Today, we are featuring none other than our very own Mike Kai, my boss and my senior pastor. I also serve here at Inspire Church as one of the location pastors alongside with Pastor Clint Chinnan, and both of us had the opportunity to interview Pastor Mike around his latest book, That Doesn't Just Happen, How Excellence Accelerates Everything. And it is packed with great gems of wisdom and insight. And hey, if you have been blessed and found value in this Leader Podcast, please rate, review, leave a comment. We would love to hear from you. This will also help us to get this content out to even more people. And if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe so that you can get the latest episodes as soon as they are released. And also, if you haven't gotten your own copy of That Doesn't Just Happen, How Excellence Accelerates Everything, make sure you grab yours today. You can find it on Amazon or go to mikekai.tv. Also on that site, you can grab additional resources such as the masterclass that goes along with the book. It is brand new content to help you dig deeper and help apply the principles that are covered in the book. It's a great resource to go through with your teams, a small group, or just to go through it on your own to take your leadership, business, or ministry to the next level. Well, without further ado, check out part one of our interview with author, pastor, leader, Mike Kai. Hey everybody, welcome to the Pound for Pound Leader Podcast. And what an amazing privilege we have today, because we are actually going to speak with the man himself, Pastor Mike Kai, about his brand new book, That Doesn't Just Happen, How Excellence Accelerates Everything. Welcome, Pastor Mike. Thank you for joining us on your podcast.
Thank you, DJ. Thank you, Clint. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's been awesome just reading the book and hearing people just getting so many great gems out of it, applying it into their world, into their businesses, into their ministries. And so one question, Pastor Mike, that people want to know is, what compelled you to write this book during this time?
I had time. I had time. I mean, I was busy. You guys all know, you guys are on staff, that probably 2020, everybody worked probably 3 times as hard as they ever did. They used different muscles. They did different things that they really hadn't done before and took everything to a whole new level, right? So we all know that. But I did have time because I was home and my staff was able to create the space for me in order to write this book. Because at the same time when we launched the Inspire Collective, so you're launching the Inspire Collective. You are thinking business, ideation, motivation. You're doing all of these different things. Sam Chan, Martin Van Tilburg, and myself, that I felt it was only appropriate that I would write a book, a business book, or a book based upon entrepreneurialism when it came to culture. So all of that different things started happening. But when I first wrote the book, I actually had taught these principles to you guys all through these years. It's a spirit of excellence that I always wanted to carry. And no matter how much money you have, it doesn't matter. Excellence is not about what you have or how much money you have. It's about what are you doing with what you've got, doing the best that you can. Because when you grow up, and I grew up in a good enough society, that's good enough, that's good enough. And some people didn't grow up in that, right? But we grew up in a lot of, good, that's good. That'll roll, that'll work. But actually, when you enter into a space like business, or you actually have to differentiate and separate yourselves from everybody else, what's going to be the differentiator? To me, it's going to be excellence, as long as you hold on to your authenticity. So while I was writing the book in the very beginning, the book idea came from preaching one weekend on King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, going to visit him on this incredible thing. And while I was preaching, all of a sudden the light goes off while I'm preaching that this is a book. This is a book about a site visit of the biggest proportions at that time in the known world. And Solomon, of course, he was like the wisest person that ever lived. Remember, he doesn't ask for gold, doesn't ask for riches, doesn't ask for the death of his enemies. He asks for wisdom, and God gives him everything that he didn't ask for. To the point where gold and silver were so common in the kingdom that the economy of Jerusalem and the nation of Israel was its most powerful economy. So you have a powerful economy, you have a powerful military, then you have the, you have the presence of God in the temple, who's the ultimate protection and blessing. And then you have 20 years of culture curating, 20 years of Solomon building the kingdom. Remember now, his father was a warrior. His father became a warrior who became a king. He was a nomad before he became a king. I mean, he was a shepherd before he became a king. And now Solomon is born into royalty at the very beginning of David's, he's learning, Jerusalem. He's learning what it means to be a king. This is after his biggest fall with Solomon's mother, Bathsheba. And all of this, now this young boy brought up with all of his prince's brothers and his probably sisters, sisters for sure, raised this way. Now all of a sudden, God puts his hand on this young guy. And then 20 years later, the Queen of Sheba is hearing about all of this for years and finally goes to see with her own eyes what she'd been hearing with her own ears for so long. That's why I wrote the book. I thought the book would be perfect right now for people who are in business, people who are in ministry, people who are whatever sphere of society that they're in. Excellence is huge right now. And you can tell people who have it and people who are not carrying it and can learn it though.
Right. Yeah, so Pastor Mike, you've exampled this, and DJ and I, we've had the amazing privilege of having a front row experience with you. And so how does excellence look like in the business area or in any industry? What have you observed about the businesses that are thriving?
I think first of all, whatever they've got, they do it really, really well. So if it's office space, if it's a front shop in the storefront, it's clean. I mean, it's like stuff's picked up. You walk in and people are really nice to you. They greet you from the moment that you walk through that door. They don't hover over you. They give you time to get ready before you make your order. The employees are thinking about customer first. They're not giving them an attitude because, I took a class as a barista, you know what I'm saying? Like, or I'm a roaster, or, all good. But at the same time, we realize that right now, more than ever, we are competing for people's consumer loyalty. And if we're competing for the consumer loyalty, what's going to make you different? Is it the way that you cook stuff? No, it's actually going to be the way you make people feel. So when people walk through those doors, do you count? Do you matter? And are they served really, really well? Or is your staff, entitled? Is it like, well, check one of the boxes, automatic, give me 10, 15, or 20% or other. And I'm like, we don't have as many waiters and waitresses like we used to, because right now a lot of companies have gone takeout because of the mandates, and it's been like that for the last 2 years or 3 years. Right. What a little screen. Automatic. Pick which one you want to tip me. I said, why? What'd you do? What'd you do? Yeah. So I come from the old school restaurants where I was a bus boy and I busted.
Yeah.
I busted. Yeah. I busted my lower back from carrying heavy tubs filled with old spaghetti factory plates with breadcrumbs all over the place. If you remember that restaurant, I'll never go there again because I don't want a carb load. It's a great place, but I'll fall asleep. I used to work there. I worked there for 2 years or a year and a half. Then, what else? I worked at the Willow's restaurant, world famous Willow's restaurant, doesn't exist anymore. But man, I remember working that restaurant as a busboy and as a waiter, and more busboy, I did some banquet stuff. And let me tell you, that's hard work. Yeah. That's worthy of a 15% tip, 20 if you're really good. Yeah. And the busboys actually made the waiters and waitresses look good back in those days. So I have a hard time, excuse me, when I walk up to your counter and you're handing me the food that I ordered, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I gotta give you want a 15 to 20% tip. I'm generous, and I do, you know me.
Of course.
I'm gonna give it.
We do too.
But I have a hard time.
Yeah.
Well, wait, did I answer your question on excellence?
Yeah.
Okay, what does it look like? You said, what does it look like? Yeah. It's the way the customer feels.
Yeah.
It's an experience. Yeah. It has to be an experience. Yeah. So church has to be an experience. Of course, they're going to experience the Holy Spirit, but experience God. But they have to have an experience that Sunday that's not only dependent on the message, but it's dependent on the way they felt from the moment they drove into your parking lot to the moment that they left. It's an experience.
Good. Yeah, so good. You've created that experience here, of course, in Inspired Church, and it's been 20 years now. You've been shaping this culture, protecting this culture. Throughout these years and just through your experience through it all, what have you found like this needs to be done?
To protect it, well, first of all, I don't want to protect it. Because if you're protecting it, that means you're losing it. So I know you don't mean it that way, but what I would like to say is probably the best thing is to always teach on it.
Yeah.
Teach on it. Teach on it. Because there's other parts of the culture of our church I would find more worthy of protecting than this one. So this one, the culture of excellence, is just one part of the culture of Inspired Church, which of course we get throughout the Bible, from the Old Testament to the New Testament, and not only the book of Acts, because the book of Acts is critical and key. But I think that I just love teaching about it. I love making sure that people understand it, that this doesn't just happen.
Yeah.
Like churches like this, that doesn't just happen. Great businesses throughout the world, that doesn't just happen. That doesn't happen. I mean, especially when you have no money from the start up, from the ground up. When you only got like $5,000 in the bank when the moment that you start 20 years ago in 2001. So we didn't get funding. Like, we didn't have venture capitalists giving us a couple $100,000 to launch the church. No, it's just, it's slower. And because it's slower, and when you grow, incrementally, bottom line is, let's remember this, that while we only had 500 people or 200 people, we were still excellent. We were doing the best we could with what we had. It wasn't like, oh, when we get a building, we're going to be excellent. No, we were already heading there. We were heading there.
Yeah, so good. Pastor Mike, when you've been all around the world, you've been to all kinds of venues, environments. Tell us about a story where maybe excellence was either subpar or something happened in an event or something happened in your experience that you saw, man, this was a cut above excellence.
I mean, of course I go to Australia. I mean, I've been to Chicago, Illinois, when I first started, to go to a preaching conference to learn how to preach better. Because God knows that I needed to preach better. And I always wanted to be good. So I went, and I was blown away by the building in South Barrington, Illinois. City of Chicago, probably one of the biggest churches in the world at that time, for sure America, one of the most powerful leaders. And I walked away going, wow, this is huge. It was almost overwhelming, like we could never do this. But that's your brain 20 years younger. You don't think you can do this. And then a few years later, about 7 or 10 years later, I get to go to Australia. And I go to Australia to one of the most famous churches in the world, and I walk into their buildings, and I'm given the tour, and I'm seeing that building, and I'm seeing this building. I see where they start. And you start to go, wait. Maybe we can do that. But it's hard to emulate what they do. So, you are who you are, and they are who they are. And you would love to be them, but you know that you have to culturally adapt and creatively contextualize what you saw in another city and bring it to you. And then that was a game changer for us. The other game changer, most definitely, was when I went to South Africa. And I went to this amazing church in Johannesburg. And just the way that Lisa and I were treated from the moment we were picked up in the car. And of course, they had to have a higher level of security because the city can be dangerous at times. Picked us up in this incredible, great car, great young men opening the doors, take us to the hotel called the Michelangelo Hotel. And we get into the hotel, and man, it looks like just like probably the most posh hotel I've ever been in. Like, I've been to bougie hotels, which are, pretty cool. And a bougie hotel is kind of like you take an old industrial section and they throw in some really old-fashioned furniture with velvets and pinks. And I've stayed in some really, I've seen the world because of God, right? Because of Jesus. So I just want to say that. I gave up my passport. I gave up my desire to travel when I quit my job at American Airlines, where I was working on the ramp there. I learned a lot of customer service there. And I remember giving that up. So I'll never travel again. I'm going to be a youth pastor forever. I'm going to be a broke youth pastor forever because I love Jesus. And so I quit my job at American Airlines. And I quit my job, and I was making good money to go become a youth pastor with no promises. Like, if I couldn't hang, they would have let me go. Yeah. If I put my foot in my mouth too much, and I often did, they would have fired me. If I couldn't deliver, or if I fell, I had a moral failure, they would have got rid of me. So anyway, and deserved to if I did. And I quit that job, and I said, I'll never fly again. That's it. But you know what? Within like 2 to 3 years, God stamps my passport. And now I get invited to places I never thought I would ever be, in places that I never thought I could imagine. And I would say that I found myself at Rivers Church, Pastor Andre Olivier and his beautiful wife Vilma at their incredible church. And I walked into that building, and that is possibly right now one of the most beautiful church buildings ever. 3 stories, seats, I don't know, 3,000, just right, and just spectacular. For the way that I experienced the whole thing, and I walked away, and I came back, well, okay, can't do what they do. What they did was they curated lights. They went to America and shipped stuff from eBay and sent it all to a French church in New York, put it all in a shipping container and had it all shipped. And then they had all of their pieces for the different motif that they wanted for what their whole place would look like. And I was blown away. Blown away. They even have this. This pastor's wall of all of their guest pastors that have spoken over the years, and mine is on that wall. Like, how does that happen? That doesn't just happen. That doesn't just happen.
Yeah.
And so the Lord has been so good, and He's been so gracious, and yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's incredible. You know, one of the things that we have here, so you have multiple locations that we have at Inspire. People have different businesses, and maybe they've got multiple businesses. And there's always that challenge of maybe the original business has the culture, the excellence is there, it's solid. Yeah. But then how do you ensure that that's translated across different locations, even in different areas of the world, wherever they may have businesses or even locations?
We just have 4 locations, 1 international, and we have 3 here locally, and the 4th one we start building this year. But I think that if I look at some of the greatest models of franchises in the world, you gotta put probably, I'm gonna say Chick-fil-A, because a Chick-fil-A, they're really good, right? They're known, their people are really, Chick-fil-A and what's the other one? In-N-Out? Their employees are very friendly.
Yeah.
Very, very friendly. I mean, they get it. They understand it. So how do you duplicate that? Training. Yeah. It's training. And so every manager, I'm assuming, has to get retrained all the time, continue training upon training, so that he can train his team to follow the same exact standards. And so I would assume that the people who are running the different franchises have totally bought in and totally want it to be like everybody else and no different. We want to put a little spin on it. Not in Chick-fil-A. No, you know what I'm saying? We want to add our In-N-Out teriyaki burger. I don't think so. You're going to get that one passed, maybe for a limited time only. And even at the McDonald's, we have in McDonald's in Hawaii, we have our own special little flavors. Right? You got your little own special pie, you got your own little breakfast with your own Hawaii meats and all of that. And maybe you might have a McTerry burger. But that's not the norm.
Right.
And it has to be that, especially like in Hawaii, especially with you guys as location pastors, that you gotta, you might not have the same building, but you have to have the same spirit of excellence and be able to bring that with you, even if you're renting a not so hot place at the moment. You've got to, it's the spirit more than it is the architecture.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so along those lines, what would you say to a business owner who is finding out that along the way maybe they've hired a little too quickly, but they're noticing their cultures of excellence is slipping? How would you encourage that business owner to adjust?
It's hard because you can't come in with a heavy hand and that business owner, that depends on how big is the business. Like, so it's actually going to take the owner of that business to actually be there physically to hear and watch how they're doing it with their employees, with the customer base. Yeah. They have to experience it. They have to watch their team. Like, I cannot fully lead this church unless I'm actually in this building 2 times a week, minimum. Because the other 2 days a week, I am preaching. The other 1 day a week, I am studying. But then it's 2 to 3 times a week, I'm in this building on Monday or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever day it would be. It doesn't matter. I can't lead it because I do know that, I hate to say it, when the cat's away, the mice will play.
Yeah.
And the level goes down and people show up late, 5 minutes late, they don't make it for the 9 a.m. time that we always have, or whatever reason, you watch the quality slip. But when they know that the owner or the general manager or when the boss is going to be there and he could come at any time, you never know when he's going to come. You might not get a trumpet call first and then he shows up. You know, just throwing that in there. You just never know when he's going to come and when he's going to be there. And when he's there, people are on their toes. And you want to keep people on their toes because people get comfortable.
Yeah.
And staff members can get comfortable, and employees can get comfortable, and baristas can get comfortable, and counter help can get comfortable. And even sometimes, you know, people just slack. It just happens. It just happens.
Yeah.
They take their foot off the gas.
Yeah. Yeah. And I noticed in your book, you talked about just that's the point of the business where maybe you'll start seeing the erosion where they could go to enterprising.
Yeah.
What would you say to people who feel like, man, we're kind of plateauing, maybe we're hitting the erosion stage just because everything that's happening in the world right now? How would you encourage them to like move? How can they move up into that enterprising trajectory?
I think always being hungry. I think the first thing is once you think you have arrived, it's actually the beginning of a decline or the beginning of the end. You've heard it say, if you're green, you're growing. If you're ripe, you're rotting.
Yeah.
If you're always growing, you're in growth mode. You always realize that pride comes before fall. And so if you think you're the cat's meow, how's all these phrases? If you think you're all that, you got another thing coming.
Yeah.
Like if I ever felt like our staff had a prideful attitude, like we are it, man, and everybody else should learn from us. No. You know me, if I smelled that we were prideful, and I'm sure there are times that people have been, and I didn't know. But if I ever knew that people were carrying themselves that way, I mean, in the past, we've had a couple of staff members, I don't even want to throw that out, but it's the truth, that carried themselves that way, even amongst our own people, and I didn't even know about it. I remember going, when there were great churches in Hawaii, before we even hit our stride, or before we even became a church, I think, I already had sensed a lot of that in this state, coming from one of the most stronger churches at that time, and even in the history. And that whole leadership team had that. Did you know what I'm talking about? They carried themselves with that arrogance and with that pride. And I was like, wait, that's weird. Now, I'm not looking back and getting judgmental about that, but it's the truth. It's what I observed.
Yeah.
And it's the way that they carried themselves. And it's just not right. And so anytime when you're going up the curve, you're trying to go up the bell curve, and you're trying to, what's the beginning? The beginning is what phase is that? Entrepreneurial phase. And from entrepreneurial, you go up to emerging. And from emerging, you get up to, what's the one at the top of your hair?
That's
we should know this.
Yeah. Established.
But the thing is, when people get established in life, or people get established in business or church, this is where they take their eyes off of the real vision, and they start doing other things that are actually taking them away from what they could be doing great. It's not that they don't have the capacity. Some people have the capacity, a call to do something different, to Swiss Army knife it. But then there's some people who or sometimes some organizations, they just have lost sight of what they were supposed to do. And then before you know it, they become blockbuster video, right? And you were in the VHS market, but you wanted to make money off of late fees. So you did not switch to a mail-in DVD system, because how would you get late fees? And now you're blockbuster, and you become a cautionary tale of established success.
Wasn't that a great interview so far? And that's just the first part of our time with Pastor Mike. There's so much more wisdom and great insights in part 2 of the interview, so you won't want to miss it. To find out about the great Yelp experience Pastor Mike had, you need to get the book. Pick it up on Amazon or at mikekai.tv, and don't forget to grab the masterclass, 10 sessions of new content unpacking excellence, such as 6 steps to creating an excellent process, why shaping language of your culture matters, and key principles to creating a winning culture, and there's so much more. Well, thanks for joining us today on the Pound for Pound Leader Podcast with Mike Kai. See you in part 2 of our interview. Aloha.